Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. And I guess welcome back to me just a little bit. Last week, Christmas week, a very short week for me, as I had told you. And this week will be short. We're going to have two videos today. We'll have Monday and Tuesday. And then, as I suggested to you last week, I will take the remainder of a little bit of time off to enjoy the holiday season and to celebrate my birthday. And by the way, a couple of you have sent me a birthday present of, a check. That's so kind. It's absolutely wonderful. And I'm going to put that to very, very good use. My pickup needs one of those spray-in bed liners. And so I'm short on my money, but, that's the way it is. So I got to do a little bit of planning to get that done. But I do want to thank those of you who sent me a birthday present. That's just extremely, extremely kind, and I do certainly appreciate it. Now, today's video is going to be a bit of a summary of what we have seen on the parable of the absent master. I've spent a good bit of time on Matthew 25:14 and following, demonstrating how it serves as the source, as the fountain for virtually all of the New Testament teaching concerning the return of Christ. And to be honest about it, I don't know of very many commentators that would doubt that. It is widely, generally, almost unanimously agreed that Christ's parable in Matthew 25:14 and following about the return of the absent master for the time of the judgment, etc., is the second coming of Christ of Hebrews 9:28. It's the coming of Christ in like manner of Acts 1. It's the coming of Christ, his parousia, of 1 Thessalonians 4. It's the time of the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 and 2 Corinthians 5. In other words, very, very, very few commentators deny that the parable of the absent master of Matthew 25:14 and following is anything other than the final coming of Christ, the end of the age, the end of the Christian age, if you wish to use that term. Now, the reason this is so incredibly critical to understand is, as I have demonstrated, this is only one of a few other parables of the return of the absent master. In Matthew 21:33, we have the return of the absent owner of the vineyard. And yet the context reveals there's no question whatsoever. It is flat undeniable that the return of the absent master in Matthew 21:33 and following occurred in AD 70. So it raises the question. If the return of the absent master in Matthew chapter 21 is unequivocally and undeniably AD 70, then how does one postulate and posit and claim, oh, well, yeah, Matthew 21 is AD 70, but Matthew 25:14 and following, that's the end of the world? One must have extremely powerful evidence and proof of that claim. Furthermore, in Luke chapter 19, verse 11 and following, Jesus told the parable of a man which bears more than a little bit of similarity, by the way, with Matthew 25:14 and following. I don't know of any commentators that go out of their way, to demonstrate these are different parables. So you have a man, calls his servants, he's going to go away into a far country, there to receive a kingdom. Now look, does anyone deny that Christ's ascension was him going away to receive the kingdom, to sit at the Father's right hand? Psalms 110, 1-4. Well, if there's anybody out there that denies it, it would be the dispensationalist. So here we have a parable of a man who was going to go away into a far country and then to return. While he was there, his citizens sent an embassage after him saying, "We will not have this man to rule over us. We have spent time considering the fact that was the Jews. So if the parable of the absent master of Matthew 25, 14 and following, is the return of the absent master of Luke chapter 19, 11 and following, in which the master, having received the kingdom, would return and judge those citizens who said, we will not have this man to rule over us. And again, there's no question. It's undeniable. It's unequivocal. That was Christ's return and judgment of Old Covenant Israel for rejecting him as their king. So once again, if these parables are absolutely parallel, then we have two parables that are unequivocally applicable to AD 70. And by the way, I hear people say, and I consider this one of those argumentum ad desperatum arguments, but I have people say, well, Matthew 21:33 and following, that's AD 70. Yes, and it's true that Luke 19:11 and following, yes, that's AD 70. But you see, we have to understand AD 70 was a type and a shadow of the real coming of the Lord. That's the position of Kenneth Gentry and many, many amillennialists and postmillennialists. And yet I've been challenging men who make that argument. I've been challenging them for years to produce a text from the New Testament that proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that the events of AD 70 were typological, that they were a foreshadowing of anything else, of anything beyond them. Paul said, the end of the ages has come upon us, and he said that 2,000 years ago. And by the way, the Greek of that passage, as Davidson, as Richard Hayes, and other scholars have pointed out, the Greek of that text points out that Paul was saying the goal, it's from the Greek word telos. It's not simply end, it means the goal of all of the previous ages has come upon us. Now, if the goal of all of the previous ages was arriving in the first century, and yet you postulate that the real goal of all of the previous ages is yet in our future, then you're denying what Paul said. He didn't say, a minor goal or a typological goal of the previous ages has come upon us. No, he said, the goal of all the previous ages has arrived. The word arrived, or has come upon us, is from the Greek word katentao, and it means the destination has arrived. So Paul uses telos and katentao to drive home the point that the goal of all previous ages was occurring in the first century. No period of waiting for 2,000 years was in Paul's mind or in the text. So we have seen that this concept that, yes, AD 70 was the return of the absent master, but we're still waiting for the real return, has no merit. And we have examined the parallels between Matthew 25:14 and following and, Acts chapter 1. We have examined a good bit in detail, demonstrating that Acts chapter 1 is not the fulfillment, that is, the ascension, is not the fulfillment of Daniel chapter 7, 13 and 14, and the coming of the one like unto the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven in power to receive the kingdom. Well, that's a common view. We have demonstrated that is not biblical. Because in Matthew 16, 27 and 28, Jesus put his coming with the angels to receive the kingdom, coming in the kingdom, I should say, as the time of the judgment. just like Daniel 7 does. We have shown that Matthew chapter 25, 31 or 29 to 31 puts the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with the angels, with a shout for the gathering of the elect in the kingdom, was to be in that generation in judgment, not at the ascension, in judgment. And so we have demonstrated that this coming of the Son of Man, i.e., the return of the absent Master, is posited by a careful comparison and a careful conflation of other passages. You know, what we've tried to do here, ladies and gentlemen, is to exercise properly analogia scriptura, comparing Scripture with Scripture, showing how these passages over here help us to understand these passages over here. We cannot take these passages, for instance, about the return of the absent Master in isolation from other passages which are about the return of the absent Master, and say, oh, well, yeah, that's AD 70. This has to be end of the world. Why does it have to be end of the world? Why does it have to be the end of the Christian age? There really and truly is simply no justification, and here's the bottom line. If in fact, and it's not an if, since it is a fact, that Matthew chapter 25, 14 and following, and the parable of the return of the absent Master, is the same coming, the same return of the absent Master of Matthew 21, 33 and following, Luke 19, and we might even throw in there Mark chapter 13, 31 and following. If it's the same return of the absent Master, and if it is the coming of Acts 1, if it is the coming of 1 Corinthians 15, if it's the coming of Christ of 1 Thessalonians 4, etc., 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 and if it is the return or the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven of Daniel chapter 7, then since Jesus unequivocally posited his coming as the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven in power and great glory as the time of the judgment of Israel for shedding the blood of his saints, that means the return of the absent Master of Matthew 25, 14 and following, and again, Acts 1, 1 Corinthians 15, 1 Thessalonians 4, etc., and Daniel chapter 7 were fulfilled in AD 70. And I hope that you'll go back and watch last week's video. I believe the video number is 539. So go back, read that, take your notes, absorb it, look at it clearly, and you will, I think, you will catch the power of the comparisons of the connecting of the dots between Daniel 7, Acts 1, Matthew 24, 29 to 31, and Matthew 25, 14 and following, proving beyond any shadow of a doubt the Olivet Discourse cannot be divided. And listen, I mentioned my book, or this concept of the return of the absent Master, and Matthew 25 being a type and a shadow. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com, and order my book, AD 70, A Shadow of the Real End, ? In that book, I adduce over 10 reasons why AD 70 was not a type or a shadow of any other coming of the Lord. And do not forget, I mean, here we are right on the cusp of the new year, okay? But during the entirety of January 2022, U.S. orders only, okay? U.S. orders only. On all orders of $25 or more, you will receive a 15% discount plus free shipping. So get yourself a copy of that book, 8070, A Shadow of the Real End, ? And enough order to make it over $25, and you get 15% discount plus free shipping. You'll love it. Now, tomorrow, which will be the second and final video for this week, like I said, going to celebrate my birthday, 72 years old. But anyway, tomorrow we're going to begin an examination of the final parable in Matthew chapter 25. You are going to be blown away by the proof, by the evidence to prove that Matthew 25, 31 and following was reference to Christ's coming in AD 70, proving the Olivet Discourse is not divided. I'll see you on the flip side.